In at number 10, Lady Gaga. While on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Lady Gaga was involved in an embarrassing blunder. While the show was filming from home due to the pandemic, Jimmy called Gaga for a segment they were going to do on his show. He was live on air at the time of the call, but Gaga did not get the memo and answered the call as if she was not on live TV at that moment. When she answered the phone, she immediately said, quote, "I can't, Jimmy, I can't talk right now, I'm really sorry, it's just a really weird time." Jimmy then turned his phone towards the camera to show Gaga that she was on camera at this very moment. She was super confused and asked if she was on camera, which she totally was. But she still did not take the hint, and when he asked her about upcoming projects, she replied, quote, "I can't tell you everything right now because I'm still ironing out the details. I have a lot of phone calls to make, can I call you Friday?" Then she basically just hung up and Jimmy was forced to improvise to fill the time. I think Gaga's assistant should be fired for not filling her in. And at number 9, Kris Jenner. Kris Jenner has been on television for over a decade since the start of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Because of the family's success on their show, the sisters got spin-off shows like Kourtney and Khloe Take Miami and Life of Kylie. But Kris's TV venture sadly did not work out. Back in 2013, Kris revealed her newest venture was a daytime talk show that she would be hosting. It felt like it would be a smash hit, but sadly it was not, and the show was scrapped after 6 episodes. The initial 6 shows were meant to be a test run to see if it would become a real deal show or not. Sadly, after the 6 episodes, it was not renewed. According to The Hollywood Reporter, a Fox exec said that, quote, "Kris Jenner was uninteresting." They said, quote, "When the camera was on, she looked not just like a deer in the headlights, but like a deer that already got hit." That's definitely not what you want to hear when you're hosting a talk show. The show was a dream come true for Kris, but sadly she had to face failure when it was not successful. And at number 8, Amber Rose. Watch What Happens Live host Andy Cohen hosts one of the juiciest shows on TV right now, where guests will get drunk and talk about gossip on live TV. While doing an interview about his show, he was asked who the worst guest he ever had on. Andy replied that it was Amber Rose. Apparently she refused to answer questions that might make her look bad, so the whole thing was super awkward because Andy had to improvise on the spot. Again, this is live TV, so it's not fun when things go off course. Andy told E! News, quote, "She didn't want to answer any of my shady questions. She turned to me, she goes, quote, 'Am I a horrible guest?' I go, 'You are in the running for one of the worst guests we've ever had.'" And at number 7, Rick Ross. Late night host James Corden revealed who his least favorite guest was, and he exposed it was the rapper Rick Ross. While James was filming his segment Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts, he was asked the question. James was debating whether to answer or not, but then he blurted out Rick Ross. Apparently while Rick was on the show, he refused to do tons of the segments that he previously agreed to, which left James and his team scrambling for replacements. James said, quote, "We sent the stuff to Rick's people, and Rick had seen it, loved it, and was so excited to do it. Rick Ross came and sat here, and we did the whole thing about binging Netflix with rapping." And Rick goes, quote, "Cool, I'm just gonna go to the restroom." Then about 20 minutes later, we just stood there and he hadn't come back. Then his management person came back and went, "Yeah, Rick's not gonna do that." James obviously didn't appreciate that he was blindsided, and he was not asked back. And at number 6, Olivia Jade. Olivia Jade became a household name after her famous parents were convicted of bribing her and her sister's way into prestigious university, USC. Olivia had become an influencer in her own right and documented her life on YouTube and Instagram. Through her work as an influencer, she even got collaborations with brands like Sephora, but that all came crashing down when it was exposed that she was a fraud and faked her way into college, pretending to be a rower. After taking months offline, she started her apology tour on the show Red Table Talk. This is a show hosted by the Smith family members, Jada Pinkett Smith and Willow Smith. After the interview, many felt that they couldn't accept Olivia's apology. Olivia said she didn't think anything was wrong when her parents were telling her to lie her way in because everyone in her circle was doing similar things to secure a spot. Olivia said at the time she did not realize her privilege. One of the hosts of the show, Adrian Banfield Norris, called the interview frustrating. She said, quote, "I just found it really ironic that she chose 3 black women to reach out to for her redemption story. I feel like here we are, a white woman coming to a black woman for support, but we don't get the same from them." Also adding that as a 21-year-old woman, Olivia should have known what her parents did was wrong. Halfway number 5, Jeanine Pirro. Jeanine Pirro is best known as Fox TV personality Judge Jeanine, but she got in a bit of hot water after former host of The View, Meghan McCain, revealed the worst guest she ever had on the show was Jeanine. Apparently during the interview she shouted profanities, questioned Whoopi Goldberg's contributions to black women, and even threw her microphone at Meghan. She accused the host of having Trump derangement syndrome, then Whoopi kicked her out of the building. To make matters worse, Jeanine Pirro then went on Sean Hannity's show later that night and made it seem like she was the victim. It was attacked by the ladies at The View. This made the ladies even more angry, and she was obviously not allowed back to the show. And at number 4, Aziz Ansari. Aziz Ansari and Stephen Colbert had a slightly awkward interaction while Aziz was on his Late Show in 2015. After Aziz released his series on Netflix called Master of None, Colbert had Aziz on the show to promote it. At one point, Stephen brought up that both men were from North Carolina, and it was a strange coincidence. Since Aziz is a champion of diversity in Hollywood, he decided to use this opportunity to make a point about diversity. Aziz replied, quote, "Stephen's the first late night host was from South Carolina and the bajillionth white guy. Steven responded, quote, "Right, exactly. You know you've talked about not enough people of color, minorities on television. Is having you on my show, does that count at all?" Aziz responded that it did count and added, quote, "It's really diverse right now. It's like 50% diverse. This is an all-time high for CBS." And at number 3, Russell Brand. Chelsea Handler does not hold back about how she feels about other celebrities, and she savagely shaded Russell Brand when asked who the worst guest on her show Chelsea Lately was. Russell had been on her show multiple times, and even though she likes him as a person, apparently he was a real pain on set. Specifically how he acted before the show, and all the demands he had about the green room before he was able to get on camera. Chelsea said, quote, "The only person who was a pain in the ass was Russell Brand. I would never want him back. He stopped all of our production schedules because he needed 3 espressos before he could even come on for his interview," Chelsea told Grazia magazine. If this is a common issue, he might have a hard time promoting his projects from now on. And at number 2, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift was once known for her extensive dating history, and it seemed like any talk show she would go on would ask about her newest flings. The time Taylor went on The Ellen Show in 2013 was no exception, and Ellen kept pestering Taylor about if she was dating Zac Efron. In the clip, Ellen asked, quote, "You were here with your boyfriend Zac Efron last time, how's he doing?" The pair then got into a heated debate over whether Taylor dated Zac or not. For a preview on how cringy the conversation was, Taylor said, "I don't know, I haven't talked to him in a while because we didn't date." Then Ellen said, "Yes you did. Why do you deny it?" Taylor added, "Because we didn't." Then Ellen said, "Okay, so let's just talk about the new CD then. Which song is about Zac on the new CD?" Taylor is clearly super frustrated during the convo, and at the end she said, "This makes me feel so bad about myself. Every time I come on here, you put a different dude up there on screen." And finally, number 1, Trista Sutter. If you're not familiar with the Bachelorette franchise, usually the lead will go on the late night shows while the show is airing to drum up publicity. Sadly, some of these ladies are not too interesting, and the late night hosts will go through the motions until they have a guest that they actually want to talk to. This was the case while Bachelorette star Trista Sutter was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. When Jay was asked if any of his guests completely bored him, he replied that he once had an awkward run-in with Trista Sutter. Apparently, right after Trista was on the show talking about The Bachelorette, she ran into Jay Leno in the parking lot and asked for a photo. But apparently he had no idea who she was and didn't realize that she was the woman who was just on TV with him. Apparently he was so bored by their conversation that he didn't even bother to remember what she looked like.
At number 10, Vivica A. Fox. You know, you don't always have to like everybody. It's okay not to be the biggest fan of someone, but for the sake of appearances, it might be a good idea to at least pretend like this person doesn't bother you. This could be extra good advice for celebrities as well. Because Hollywood is essentially one big show, having beefs with people isn't always the best thing for you, and watching two people who hate each other try to have a conversation can be painful as well. Take for example the bad blood between Vivica A. Fox and Jimmy Kimmel. To start, these two celebrities weren't the biggest fans of each other to begin with, but when the actress was on Jimmy Kimmel Live back in 2005, their bad blood started to really boil, and it led to the actress being banned from the show. The actress was on the show to promote her movie Missing, but things didn't go as smoothly as planned, because as Jimmy made a joke about one of Vivica's friends, it made her upset and she ended up storming off the set, leaving Jimmy to finish the segment without his guest. Later on, he said that Vivica was one guest that he would never have back on the show. At number 9, Bill Hicks. Many times in Hollywood, we see people get in trouble for being too controversial. It's basically the backbone of cancel culture. Well, here's an example of someone being banned from a talk show for being so controversial that their segment was scrapped entirely. Comedian Bill Hicks made a number of appearances on Letterman between 1984 and 1993, but his 12th appearance on the show was scrapped after it was deemed too controversial to be aired. After that, a ban was issued. According to the comedian, Letterman as well as the audience didn't seem to have many issues with his set, but it was the show's executives who had the whole thing scrapped. This statement has been debated by some because a lot of people still took offense to some of the topics the comedian was discussing. Unfortunately, the comedian never got a chance to redeem himself on the show as he passed away a short time later. Now, before I carry on telling you guys about celebrities who've been banned from late night shows, I would first like to take a moment to ask you guys to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of our videos. At number 8, Madonna. It seems as though there's a good chunk of people who really don't like Madonna. There could be 1.5 million reasons why she and others do not always get along, but the bottom line here is that not everyone wants to be friends with the singer, especially Piers Morgan. There seemed to be some kind of one-sided beef with the singer that frankly I don't think she cares about too much, but Piers on the other hand had a lot to say about her. Morgan said that Madonna was banned from his program because she is, quote, boring and annoying. He also went on to say, quote, quote, "Madonna and I, we've never really seen eye to eye. There was a bread roll throwing incident in London in the mid-90s. There was an incident at a hotel in the south of France at the Cannes Film Festival involving a photographer and a bodyguard. There's been an incident involving a pub owned by her recently departed husband Guy Ritchie, where my brother was the manager." End quote. If you thought he was done with his commentary on the singer, you thought wrong. Pierce also said that Madonna was too vegan for TV. Whatever that means. Either way, Madonna never responded to all of Pierce's comments about her, so again, I think she remained pretty unfazed by the ban that he put in place, but clearly the TV host had some pent-up aggression there. At number 7, Joan Rivers. Apparently, late-night TV host Johnny Carson and Joan Rivers had so much beef that he not only banned the comedian from his show, but he also refused to speak to her for the rest of his life. When Carson became the host of The Tonight Show in 1962, Joan was starting to rise to fame for her comedy. She and Carson became a pretty dynamic duo as she appeared in his late night show almost 100 times. She was hired as a writer and even became a guest host when Carson was away, but in the mid-80s that's when things started to turn bad as Joan was upset that NBC never offered her a long-term contract. When talks of Carson's retirement began, there was a list of potential candidates of who would replace him, and to her astonishment, Joan wasn't on that list. The silver lining there was that Fox later contacted her about having her own late night show, and she jumped at the opportunity. This made Johnny really mad because he felt like he was almost being blindsided by the whole thing. This caused them to have a pretty big falling out, which led to Joan being banned from her former friend's show. When speaking out about the drama between them, Joan went on to say, quote, "I think he really felt because I was a woman that I was his, that I wouldn't leave him. I know this sounds very warped, but I don't understand otherwise what was going on. For years I thought that maybe he liked me better than the others, but I think that it was a question of I found you and you're my property. He didn't like that as a woman I went up against him." End quote. At number 6, Kelsey Grammer. I feel like when a celebrity asks for something specific, it should be given to them. I'm not talking about anything material like demanding a cup of ice chips or something. I mean a specific request in reference to the way that they are treated. For actor Kelsey Grammer, he made a very specific request when doing an interview with Piers Morgan, and when that request wasn't honored, there was a falling out that led to the actor being banned from the show. When the actor made a guest appearance on Piers Morgan Tonight back in 2012, he requested that a picture of his ex-wife not be shown. He was willing to answer questions about her, but just didn't want to have a photo of her be aired. Well, Piers didn't honor that request, and when a photo of his ex-wife was shown, Kelsey stormed off set. The actor's publicist said that Piers had to take accountability for his actions because Kelsey was so mad about the situation, but instead, Piers barred the actor from his show. That doesn't really seem like the right thing to do in that kind of situation, but okay. At number 5, Jackie Mason. I'm sure we are all aware of how sensitive TV networks are about what kinds of things get aired. Saying some kind of adult word can cause some serious consequences, but what about hand gestures? Well, it turns out that those are also against the rules, and someone had their whole career ended because of it. Comedian Jackie Mason had been working on The Ed Sullivan Show for a bit back in the day, and it made him pretty successful. He was given a contract for 6 appearances, which was set to earn him around $45,000, which is more like $350,000 in today's money, since this all happened back in the mid-60s. Either way, it was a very well-paying job for only having to do 6 appearances. Anyway, his entire contract was essentially ripped up after he got into some trouble for flipping the bird on stage. Jackie was playing off one of the stage managers who was making gestures with his fingers to indicate how much time he had left, but he went a little too far. As part of his little joke, he pointed his finger around the room saying, quote, "Here's a finger for you, and a finger for you, and a finger for you." End quote. This kind of behavior was not allowed, and so he was booted off the show and subsequently banned. At number 4, Artie Lang. When you're a guest on someone's show, the expectation for celebrities is that they stay alert, engaging, and on their best behavior. For comedian Artie Lang, it seems as though he didn't follow through with that unwritten rule and he got banned because of it. Lang had been struggling with substance abuse, and though he had appeared on Conan O'Brien's show a number of times, he ended up getting banned because the producer thought that he was under the influence of some kind of substance on his last appearance, so they told him that he wouldn't be welcome back on the show until he was clean and could prove it. The studio didn't want to risk anything if Artie kept coming back while he was still using, and so they did it for his own good as well as to save their own image as well. At number 3, Howie Mandel. If you watched America's Got Talent, then you know that Howie Mandel and Piers Morgan were judges together. Through the time that they worked together, Howie was known to play pranks on Piers, like using fart machines on him and setting up vending machine blockades. Although Howie thought that this was all in good fun, Piers on the other hand wasn't impressed with his co-workers' antics, and even going so far as to call Howie the quote, "most annoying man that he's ever met." end quote. Pierce didn't like Howie so much that he ended up adding him to the list of celebrities who he had banned from his show. There was some bad blood there, but honestly, after learning about how many people Piers Morgan seemed to have beef with, this ban honestly doesn't even surprise me in the slightest. At number 2, Gilbert Gottfried. This ban has to be one of the most pointless bans I have ever heard of because it really wasn't necessary at all. Howard Stern banned Gilbert Gottfried from his show simply because the comedian went on another show. I know, I don't get it either. There wasn't even any bad blood between them. When Gottfried got cancelled after making insensitive tweets about the devastating tsunami that hit Japan in 2011, Howard even came to his defense online, so really no one knows what the motive behind this ban really was. I'm sure it can't really be because he went on another show because that is so absurd, but honestly, we may never know. And finally, at number 1, Gene Simmons. I think that we can all agree that Gene Simmons is somewhat outlandish. He's a guy with a lot of big energy and no filter, so when it comes to interviewing him live, you never know what he might say, but you can certainly hope that it won't be too offensive. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They liked the guy and they liked having him on their talk show, but after causing a stir during a meeting at Fox and making some crude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene got banned for life, and it was a hot topic of its own. Some of the things that Gene said to some of the women at the network got leaked, and it's not something that you would want to have said to you, let's just put it that way. After all that went down, the singer was not welcome back on their programming, and honestly, I can't say I blame them. At number 10, Hugh Grant. You don't really hear too much about Hugh Grant these days, so when I found out that he was banned from somewhere, I was actually pretty shocked. He was banned from The Daily Show after having a really bad interview that affected the show's host. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, said in an interview that Hugh Grant was the absolute worst guest he'd ever had on the show. He spoke about how when Hugh was on to promote his film Did You Hear About the Morgans, Hugh was making a huge scene backstage and was really mean and annoying to the people who were working on set. Apparently, he was allegedly going around saying that he had better places to be. He also got really upset about the clip that they played from the film, saying, quote, "What is that clip? It is a terrible clip." To which Jon replied, telling Hugh to make a better movie. You could really tell that Jon was fed up with Hugh and his attitude on the show. Jon went on to say that because of his poor experience with Hugh, he would never have him back on his show. At number 9, Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin is known for being pretty outspoken and controversial at times, and it's because of her antics that she's been banned from just about every talk show. Because of her unpredictable actions, use of crude language, and her problematic past, she isn't welcome on shows like The View, The Today Show, Ellen, Regis and Kelly, Jay Leno, Letterman, and many others. She's racked up a lot of these bans over the years, but some new ones, like being fired from CNN, come from the backlash that she gained after the Donald Trump incident where she posed with a fake bloodied model of Donald Trump's head. She's been known to ruffle people's feathers on live TV and pull stunts that are inappropriate for broadcast. For example, during her time hosting the New Year's Eve special with Anderson Cooper on CNN, she used profanity and even removed some of her clothing on TV. On top of that, she's offended people during award shows while making speeches and making inappropriate comments. Though she's been banned from certain TV shows, I really think that people just want her banned from the media in general because of her actions. Now, before I carry on talking about more celebrities banned from late night programs, I would first like to take a moment to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, because it really helps the channel out and we appreciate you guys supporting our platform. At number 8, Harmony Korine. I think it's common knowledge, at least to most people, that when you're a guest somewhere, you should try and be on your best behavior. Most people follow this unspoken rule, but many others don't, especially celebrities, as we will see throughout this list. One person who really should have tried to behave themselves is director Harmony Korine, who's best known for the movie Spring Breakers. There was once a time when Harmony made a number of appearances on The Late Show with David Letterman in the mid to late 90s. This was also during a time when Harmony was reportedly on a lot of drugs. Though he was a frequent guest on the show, his appearances just stopped all of a sudden, and no one really knew why until 2013 when Letterman revealed the truth as to why the director was banned from coming on the show. Apparently, Letterman caught the director going through Meryl Streep's purse one time, and that was just the last straw for the late night host. When talking about this fateful event, Letterman said, quote, "I went upstairs to greet Meryl Streep and welcome her to the show. I knocked on the door and she wasn't there. I looked around and found Harmony going through her purse. True story. And so I said, that's it, put her things back in her bag, and then get out." End quote. After that, Harmony was no longer welcome on the show and has not been back since. At number 7, Bobcat Goldthwait. I think that this goes without saying, but don't go setting fire to random things. I know Adele said set fire to the rain, but that was just a metaphor. Clearly though, one guest on Jay Leno didn't quite get the memo because they ended up setting a fire during their interview on The Late Night Show. Back in 1994, actor Bobcat Goldthwait was a guest on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and during his guest appearance, the actor decided to randomly randomly set fire to his chair. At the time, Jay thought that this was just a spontaneous bit, but in reality, Bobcat came prepared for this as he brought lighter fluid and a lighter that was hidden up his sleeve. Luckily, the other guest who was there that night, Lauren Hutton, was quick on her feet and doused the flames with a cup of water. Jay, understandably, was very unhappy with all this and banned Bobcat from the show. Not only that, but the actor was also charged with arson for his stunt and was ordered to pay over $3,300 in fines, some of which went towards replacing the chair that he set fire to. Not too sure why he decided to make this interview go up in flames like that, but at least he won't be able to pull that stunt again. At least not with Jay. At number 6, Dax Shepard. Actor and comedian Dax Shepard has been very open about his struggles with substance abuse for some time now. He's opened up about some of the lowest points in his career that was caused by his substance abuse, including one time that got him banned from a late night show. Dax told a story about how he was once preparing to be on Late Night with Conan O'Brien in 2004, but when he was doing the pre-interview, he blacked out. Dax didn't remember any of the pre-interview where he was supposed to go over the talking points for the evening, and by the time his real interview started, he was so lost. He went into detail saying, quote, "I show up on the show and I don't know what he's talking about. I can tell he's queuing me up for stories I've told, but I don't know any of the stories." End quote. Because of how badly he messed up his interview, he was banned from the show for a few years until he got sober. Years later, he was welcomed back on the show and all was forgiven, but it was still a low point for the actor. At number 5, Jay Leno. This next ban was caused by one serious feud between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien. Because both men were talented late night hosts, there were a lot of pitches from different networks trying to poach one or the other to take over talk shows and whatnot. Well, things got kind of heated when Conan was promised the hosting gig for The Tonight Show when Jay's contract was up. As you would imagine, Jay didn't take the news very well, and so he decided to start his own show, The Jay Leno Show, which aired before Conan's. Well, when neither of their shows were bringing in good ratings, the network reshuffled the time slots, gave Conan's slot to Jay, and bumped Conan's show back half an hour. Conan didn't like that, took a payout, and The Tonight Show fell back into Jay's hands. Later on, when asked if he would have Jay on an episode of his show, Conan shut that down, essentially saying that Jay would have been banned from his program. There was just a lot of bitterness between them, and the water under that bridge has certainly dried up. At number 4, Gary Busey. A lot of people enjoy their personal space. I know that there are many people who love getting close to others and who are very physical people, but you know, not everybody likes that. Getting upset when someone invades your personal space without permission is pretty understandable, and this notion is what got Gary Busey banned from the Howard Stern Show. Back in 2001, actor Gary Busey was on the Howard Stern Show and seemed to have ignored the notion of personal space, and that rubbed Howard the wrong way. While on the show, the actor picked up Howard's co-host, Robin Quivers, giving him a big bear hug, and even chased Howard around the studio trying to wrestle him. Howard really didn't like what Gary was doing that day, and so he promptly banned him from coming back on the show. When Gary explained the motives behind his actions, he blamed it on his quote, 13 separate personalities. He continued to say that he was just really excitable that day, but that wasn't a good enough excuse to get him back onto the show until 2017, when he was invited to do an audio-only interview with Howard. At number 3, Howard Stern. But speaking of Howard Stern, he himself has been banned from a late night show. Apparently, he and Jay Leno have had beef ever since Howard's 1995 appearance on The Tonight Show. This appearance was pretty chaotic. Howard entered onto the show with 2 women in bikinis and prompted the women to start kissing each other on air. On top of that, Howard kept speaking over Jay and other guests while on the show as well. Jay was apparently so fed up with Howard and his antics that he nearly walked off set, and was so mad about the way that the show turned out that evening that he later called into Howard's show to say that he had, quote, gone beyond the acceptable standards. After that, Howard was banned, and he and Jay have had beef ever since. At number 2, Donald Trump. Now, to find out that Donald Trump has been banned from any kind of talk show really isn't all that surprising. So many hosts from various shows have banned the former president, but this next ban is a little juicier because it kind of involves some beef between the Donald and late night host Seth Meyers. In 2016, the late night talk show host issued a ban against Donald Trump in retaliation for Trump having revoked Seth's Washington Post credentials. Though it was an official ban, it was also done as a joke since Seth already knew that Donald would never be on a show anyway, but it was about the principle. In a joke statement to Donald, Seth said, quote, "We instituted this ban despite the fact that he's never been here or asked to be here or would never be caught dead here. I just think that it takes an amazing amount of courage on our part. So the ball is in your court, Donald. Either rescind your Washington Post ban or you're not allowed to appear on the show you have no interest in appearing on. Although maybe now that you can't have it, you're changing your mind." End quote. And finally, at number 1, Oprah Winfrey. This last ban seems to have been more so self-imposed. After making an appearance on David Letterman's show in 1989, Oprah Winfrey issued a self-imposed ban, refusing to go back on Letterman's show. After what she experienced on the show, Oprah and Letterman seem to have had some kind of feud going on, though it was more low-key than others. As for what happened to cause this self-imposed ban, well, Oprah finally opened up about the event that caused this back in 2013, saying, quote, "It was a terrible experience for me. The guy in the audience audience started yelling, "Get her, Dave." You were sort of baiting the audience and there were a bunch of drunk guys down the front. I was trying to mitigate the whole thing. It felt so uncomfortable for me. I didn't want to have that experience again." End quote. Basically, she was just really uncomfortable on the show and wanted to forget about the event, hence her minor beef with the late night host, and she just didn't want a repeat of that unpleasant experience.
And at number 10, Harmony Korine. This one is so shocking, I can't even believe that it's real. But director Harmony Korine was banned from The Late Show with David Letterman after he caught her stealing. Even worse, the person that Korine was allegedly stealing from was Meryl Streep, of all people. Letterman described the story during an interview, saying, quote, "I went upstairs to greet Meryl Streep and welcome her to the show, and I knock on the door and she was not in there. I looked around, she wasn't in there, and I found Harmony going through her purse. True story. And so I said, that's it, put her things back in the bag and get out of here." And obviously after pulling a stunt like that, nobody looked at Harmony the same way again. And at number 9, Sarah Silverman. One of the strangest interviews of all time has to be between Sarah Silverman and Bill Burr on her show I Love You America. Right off the bat, it's very confusing, with Sarah almost confronting Bill about their friendship. She even introduced him as someone she fights with like siblings and someone she loves, but they fight like crazy. The whole time we're not sure if the things that they're saying about each other is serious or just for the cameras. But from my perspective, it looked like the pair were having some sort of therapy session. Sarah then told the crowd that after they fight, Bill always texts her that he loves her. He claims that he doesn't remember this and say they fight a lot because Sarah tries to change his jokes in a way that most likely offends him. And at number 8, Jay Leno. This interview was truly painful to watch. For some reason, Jay Leno had Jimmy Kimmel on his show as a guest, even though it was clear the two were not very fond of each other. The interview got pretty savage from the moment that it started, and Kimmel ruthlessly mocked Leno for pretty much anything and everything. Jimmy even made multiple jokes about the fact that Jay Leno's show was being cancelled at that time. And the worst part was that Leno really couldn't take the heat, and he was not making any clever clapbacks. So it was basically like watching the most unfair fight on earth. At some points you even kind of pity Leno, which isn't a feeling comedians want to instill in their viewers. After this aired, Kimmel's stock with the late night community went way up and Leno's plummeted. And at number 7, Joaquin Phoenix. Anyone who follows the actor knows that Joaquin is a bit of an oddball at media events because he's pretty uncomfortable with being questioned. One of the strangest interviews of all time was one that Joaquin did with Letterman, where he acted even stranger than usual. In the 2009 interview, audience members weren't sure if he had lost his mind or if he was intoxicated with one or multiple substances. However, we learned later that the terrible interview seemed to be some sort of a bit to promote a new movie of his. In the film called I'm Still Here, Joaquin and Casey Affleck star in the biopic where Joaquin plays a rapper. And apparently Joaquin was channeling his character in the Letterman interview, that's why it was so strange. Joaquin returned to The Late Show in 2010 and apologized for his past behavior. It was clear from that interview that he's just an awkward guy in general. And at number 6, Vivica A. Fox. Fox ended up being banned from Jimmy Kimmel Live after she walked out of the interview while it was happening. Apparently Jimmy said some negative things about one of her friends, so she didn't want to stay on the show. When talking about the ban, she said, quote, "I was really surprised because I used to go on his show all the time, and there was just one time that I went on the show and he dissed my good friend, Star Jones." She continued that she was shocked when she was banned because Jimmy seemed very apologetic about the incident and apologized to her privately after it happened. So either in the moment he just wanted her back on the show and didn't mean it, or he was sorry but thought leaving the show was not the appropriate way to handle it. Halfway at number 5, Adrien Brody. Adrien Brody is a well-respected dramatic actor, winning the Oscar in 2002 for Best Actor in The Pianist. Then on the heels of his new fame, he was asked to host SNL in 2003. And when he was introducing the musical guest, Jamaican singer Sean Paul, he not only made everyone cringe with embarrassment, but he also broke one of the golden rules of live TV. For the introduction, Brody took it upon himself to grab a dreadlock wig and ramble in a problematic Jamaican accent for way too long before handing things off. And even though the Jamaican accent was very offensive and he probably should have been banned for just that, the bit wasn't planned and ended up wasting a lot of valuable time, which made SNL producers even more angry. He ended up apologizing for the insensitive bit. And at number 4, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase was a huge success on SNL and leveraged his success on the show to branch out to other huge movies like the National Lampoon's franchise, but he ended up being the only SNL cast member banned from the show. Apparently Chase was a handful from the start and insulted plenty of guests that came on the show, like Robert Downey Jr. and Terry Sweeney, but the last straw came in 1997 after it was revealed that he'd been harassing women on the show like Sherry O'Terry, who he hit on the back of the head. After this incident was exposed, Lorne Michaels banned him from the show. But it seems that the ban only applied to hosting, as he did participate in some sketches down the line. And at number 3, Madonna. Madonna is a record-breaking singer, but she's broken some other records that she might not be too proud of. One that got her a lot of flack was when she dropped the F-bomb a record-breaking 14 times on David Letterman's show. In this bizarre interview, it seems that Madonna was trying to pick a fight with Letterman and give him a taste of his own medicine, but it was basically just a train wreck. Letterman started off the interview with a jab, saying that Madonna had, quote, slept with the biggest names in entertainment history. From there, it went downhill. Madonna came on stage with her underwear behind her back and said, quote, I'm only here because I couldn't escape this, don't flatter yourself. Then Letterman started repeatedly asking her to kiss a man in the audience, to which she responded asking why he's so obsessed with her love life. Madonna then tried to get Letterman to smell her underwear, which he did not. After tons of swearing, sexual innuendos, and going way over time, they finally got Madonna to walk off the stage. And at number 2, Drake. This is another one coincidentally involving Madonna. Both Drake and Madonna got tons of heat in 2015 after Madonna kissed Drake on stage, and he had a shocking reaction. The pair were performing at Coachella, and near the end of their performance, Drake was sitting on a chair and Madonna came up behind him and planted a huge kiss. But things took a turn for the worse when after the pair pulled away from the kiss, Drake made a disgusted face. It looked like a mix of crying, laughing, and regret. After the picture went viral, Drake said it was, quote, misinterpreted, adding, quote, I got to make out with the queen Madonna and I feel 100% about that forever. But I don't know, Drake, the video doesn't lie. One insider who's allegedly close with Drake said his reaction was due to Madonna's gross tasting lipstick and not the actual kiss itself, which I actually believe. And finally, number 1, Howard Stern. Howard Stern is very raunchy, I think everyone knows that by now, but after he did a bit on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno that was too risque for network TV, he was banned by the show. And although many in the crowd were disgusted by what took place, I'm sure his diehard fans loved it. While Howard was being interviewed, he brought out 2 women half naked in lingerie, and at one point told Leno that he was going to be making late night history by, quote, having the first lesbian kiss on camera. And in true Howard Stern fashion, the kiss was insanely raunchy, which made Jay Leno incredibly nervous. After the 1995 episode ended, Leno was furious and banned Stern from the show.